You can get the dots. Because I had to get that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. We're feeling all right.
The real well.
Yes, that would be, yes, that's Chris.
Maybe she.
Do I want to admit them now so you can watch your? Yeah, I can.
She was. But judge can take. Never mind. We're live.
No order.
Oh. Thank you. All right, Scott, could you start your roll call? We'll go around and get everybody.
Yes, sir. Scott Gardner, Wyoming County IDA Economic Development Specialist.
Robin Marshall, Wyoming County IDA.
Kevin Zanner, IDA counsel.
Without the IDA board member.
Nicole Casey.
Marquez, board member. Burbank, board member.
McCormick, board member.
Jim Pierce, Executive Director, IDA.
Jennifer Tishka, IDA Program Manager.
Joe Kem, actually a retired partner, EFPR.
We have on the screen.
Hi, Chris Johnston, EFPR partner.
First order of business is to board minutes, which are in your packet. A minute to look at it. The recommendations, corrections, or discuss. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. And who's in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
In addition to that, we have the financial report, last round, the highlight. Different.
Nothing different, Chairman, you'll see the accounts receivable fees or fees that we had booked in 2022. But we were able to close with the Empire Distributing or the Park Warner project and received our fees there. Everything else is our normal monthly stuff. The lease rent is our quarterly. And we shows we ended up the month with a total of 2,514,161 in cash and CDs. And in the back, we're only in the second month of the year, so there isn't anything that's standing out that we're having an issue with.
Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial report. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So you're gonna join us and present the EFPR report, is that correct?
Yes, I'm Joe. That's Chris.
I'm sorry,
Not a problem.
straighten that out for me, that's why I know.
Yeah, I'm Joe. I'm Joe Kem. I'm actually a retired partner from EFPR, and Chris Johnson's the engagement partner.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody. This was first time through for us. So we followed up, the predecessor auditors. I just want to start off by saying Maxic gave us everything that we asked for, which was great. So the transition, I think, at least from our standpoint, was relatively smooth. I'm not so sure you guys necessarily agree, but from our standpoint, it was relatively smooth. I have a couple of things for you. There's one of these things, which is required communication, and there's actually two sets of financial statements. There's one for the IDA, which includes the IDA and the BAC, the Business Assistance Corporation. Then there's a standalone financial statement for business assistance. I'm going to start with the required communication letter. And a lot of this is kind of boilerplate stuff, but it is things that we need to communicate with you. I'm actually going to skip to page 3 of that one, yes, which is basically the status of the audit. We have a couple of housekeeping things that we need to do to finish the audit. Basically, there's a compliance interview that we need to do with you, Mr. Chairman. We need to get the financial statements approved by the board. There's some tax work that needs to be done, and then I need to follow up with internal accounting to basically get disbursements through the rest of February to just look at, see from a cutoff standpoint. But basically, other than that, we've substantially completed our audit field work. Our audit was done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. So there is the financial statement report that will appear in the front of the report. Then there'll be a report on government auditing standards that is in the back. The objective of the audit is to obtain reasonable, not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. The scope of the work is basically identical to what we talked about in the planning meeting when we had that. We will be issuing unmodified or unqualified clean opinions on the financial statements. Records and information requests were freely available. Prigmaxic pretty much gave me access to their files, and everything that we asked for from a management standpoint, they provided with no hesitation, which was great. And management had great cooperation. I just want to say you got a good team internally. From our standpoint, sometimes when you go in to do an audit, you never quite know what you're going to find. Out here, you've got, in spite of the fact that you've got a relatively small staff, you got good segregation of duties and good controls in place. And in addition to that, normally you expect to make sometimes a lot of adjustments. Out here, we made minimal adjustments, and all the adjustments that we made were really related to pronouncements the Government Accounting Standards Board put in place that are purely financial statement window dressing kinds of things that need to happen. We did not adjust any numbers that you are seeing from an accrual basis standpoint, and Robin and team gave us a couple of entries that were made. So I guess my point is that what you're seeing throughout the year from this meeting standpoint is holding true at the audit. So you can, I think, rest assured that you're seeing good information throughout the year. Page 4, again, results of the audit, more required communication. There is an extended footnote 1, which is basically all the accounting policies and practices that the organizations have. From our standpoint as auditors, we need to evaluate those as to whether they are appropriate, comply with generally accepted accounting principles and industry practice, and are applied and consistently applied and are adequately disclosed, and they are. There was one new pronouncement that GASB in their infinite wisdom decided that this was the year GASB 87. So you're going to see on basically 3 new lines on your financial statement, because what they require us to do now is where you have a operating lease in place for a period of time, and it's basically the one on this building, that they require you to create what's called a right to use asset on the books and a lease obligation to offset that. It had no income statement effect. It was purely on the balance sheet assets and liabilities. The Government Accounting Standards Board, part of their goal has been they don't like to see commitments in the financial statements. They want to see liabilities in the financial statements. So basically the fact that there's a long-term commitment in place for a lease, they wanted to see that liability on the books as opposed to just disclosed, because that liability has always been disclosed, the annual payment. And the lease was kind of the conclusion because they started off with the pension, the statewide pension liability, drilling a piece of that into the organizations, and then they followed that up. If you had post-retirement benefits other than pensions, they wanted that on the books, and then the lease was kind of the happy triumvirate that I call of stuff that they put on the balance sheet to get rid of commitments. There are estimates in every set of financial statements. That's just the nature of the beast. Really out here, the question is, when do you recognize revenue and the allowance for doubtful accounts for the loan portfolio that's there? Those are the key estimates. And we, from our standpoint, we evaluate what goes into developing those estimates, and we were comfortable with the assumptions that we used. I stated before, corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We had no past adjusting journal entries. Again, we had 3 journal entries, 2 of which were related to recording the pension liability on the books, and the other one was related to recording this GASB 87 lease obligation on the books. And again, there were a couple of cleanup entries that Robin gave us in addition. So that's, I think, like I say, that's a great thing that you have no journal entries. Page 5 is the internal control over financial reporting. In planning and performing the audit, we consider internal control. We do not audit internal control. We consider internal control in order for us to basically develop an audit plan that enables us to render an opinion on the financial statements, not on internal control. A lot of time that's a kind of a misconception. However, having said that, as part of that process, and the way we do that is we document the system, and then we do walkthroughs of key controls. So if a control is a bank reconciliation, and that's a key control is prepared by somebody and then reviewed by somebody else, we actually did walkthroughs to make sure that what we were being told happens actually happens. Having said that, if anything comes up from a control standpoint that would meet the definition of a material weakness or a significant deficiency in internal control, we would be required to disclose those to you and to talk about them. There are none that I need to bring to your attention. We also perform certain tests of compliance with laws and regulations as part of this government auditing standards report to ensure ourselves that there's no non-compliance would have a material effect on the financial statements. And again, we noted no instances of non-compliance. There's a table at the bottom of page 5 that just kind of spells out the levels of control problems. You could have a deficiency in internal control or a significant deficiency or material weakness. If it rises to the level of significant deficiency or material weakness, it then becomes a finding that needs a corrective action plan. And again, there are none. Page 6 is other required communications. Again, there were no changes to our audit plan. We developed an audit plan coming in. I think it was helpful. I've done, I can't tell you how many IDAs over the years. I was also the engagement partner on Empire State Development for 5 years. So I think we understand, the nature of the organization. So we developed the plan and we're able to execute the plan with no deviation. Nothing really rose to the level of something that we would need to be considered about with respect to violations of laws or anything like that. No consultation with other accountants, and that signing's a little self-serving. Basically, if management had questions regarding the application of accounting principles, accounting standards, our professional ethics would require that they reach out to the auditor to make sure that they have full facts and circumstances. So that's really all that means, is that the management did not seek out outside counsel from an accounting firm standpoint. Disagreements with management, there were no significant difficulties, and really there's nothing else that I need to bring to your attention as the board. At the end of the engagement, part of what we need to get is a management representation letter, which basically means that you provided the books and records to us and you responded to all of our inquiries. And we need to get that as part of going final. And then the last page is just an independence communication. We are required to be independent, and we remain so during the engagement and thereafter. Anybody has any questions on anything there, or anything Chris wants to add? please.
No, I think it's a good summary, Joe.
There are two sets of financial statements in here. The first one, the thicker of the two, is the IDA, which includes the IDA as well as the Business Assistance Corporation. The first part that I want to point out is pages 1, 2, and 3 are actually the auditor's report. And it is a 3-page report, and then there's another couple of pages at the back. We are not paid by the word. This is standard wording. And they changed the auditor's report a couple of years ago. I think this is actually the second year of or the third year of the new wording of the audit report. And it used to be the opinion part was buried down the report. They've actually spelled it out now, and it starts off with the opinion. As I indicated, it will be an unmodified or an unqualified or clean opinion on the financial statements. The third paragraph down is the change in accounting principle. Basically, there was an implementation of GASB statement number 87. That's the least standard that I talked about. And that was mandated that actually be retroactively applied to January 1st of 2021. So the next paragraph basically says that the statements were audited by other auditors, and as part of the implementation of GASB 87, we restated those statements only with respect to GASB 87. And I think this is always helpful to look at because it spells out auditor responsibilities and management responsibilities. And again, from your standpoint, you're responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements and development of an internal control process in place that enables the statements to be done. And again, the auditor's responsibility is spelled out. There is required supplementary information. There's a couple of schedules in the back on pensions. And there's other supplementary information, which is basically the combining and combined financial statements of the organizations. And then there's other information. And with respect to the required supplementary information, there's no opinion on that. With respect to the other supplementary information, there is what I call an in relation to opinion on that. And then the other information, which is a schedule prepared by management of notes and all of the leases that are out there. Again, there's no opinion with respect to that. The first page, actually page 4 of the financial statements, is a statement of financial position. That's the balance sheet. So that's the assets and liabilities of the two organizations put together. Cash year over year, including the CDs, is down about $239,000. Some of that's a function of the fact that there was an operating loss during the year, and there's some funding tied up in the MAP grant. The larger grant receivable that you see there, $227,000, is actually the MAP money that's there. The notes receivable at the Business Assistance Corporation are broken down into two pieces. There's a current portion, and then there's a long-term portion. So collectively, there was an increase. So there were new notes of about $315,000 during the year, including some grant anticipation notes related to the MAP funding. And then there were some payments to the tune of $253,000. So year over year, the balance increased. There were no notes written off, and the allowance for doubtful loans remained the same. You're going to see the net pension asset under non-current assets. Basically, on a yearly basis, the Office of the State Controller goes through and does a valuation of the statewide pension system. And this particular year, valuation was as of March 31st. And for there's what's now a net pension asset. So that's your piece of the statewide overfunding of pension that gets drilled into the financial statements. I always like to say, try and spend it, because you can't. So it's one of these things that's a financial statement only kind of asset. And then you see below, right below that is the intangible right of use asset. What we basically did is go back to the inception of the lease, present value, the lease payments, and as of December 31st, 2022, that's roughly $76,000. And that is broken down between a current portion of the lease liability of $25,000 and a lease liability long-term of $50,000. Accounts payable and accrued expenses. Some of that is really timing related, as well as there's some payables at the end of the year that were related to services performed for the MAP grant. There's unearned income, unearned revenue of $402,000, and that $218,000 of that is roughly the GAIN program that's been in place for many years, and the remainder of that is MAP related. So from an overall standpoint, net position year over year went from $6.6 million to just under $6.5 million. If you turn to the next page, page 5, this is statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position. This is the P&L side. Basically, there were revenues of about $384,000, which is down about $223,000 year over year, really due to reduced lease activity and reduced programs for the year. Operating expenses increased from $421,000 to $583,000. There was some grant expense related to MAP. That's the biggest single piece of it, and then the only other increase in the expenses is the salaries and benefits, but those are the board voted amounts. So from a year over year standpoint, in 2021, there was an operating change in that position of $193,000. In 2022, there was a negative change in that position of $185,000. And again, some of that's just timing, you know, I mean, really related to the number of projects that you were doing. The page 6 is cash flows. That's a year over year, basically takes all of the cash flow for the entities and breaks it down into a couple of buckets. There's a bucket related to operating activities, and then a bucket related to investing activities. From an overall standpoint, there's a decrease in cash and cash equivalents. So this excludes the CDs of $719,000 year over year. That reduction, $245,000 of that was related to operating activities, and then the remainder investing activities, because we did invest in CDs this year to increase that. Starting on page 7 and going for many pages thereafter are the footnotes. It was just, every firm has their own approach to how they do footnotes. Actually, I left the disclosures intact the way the predecessor firm did. So they read the same as they've always read. Note 1 is significant accounting policies, and it really starts off with what is the reporting entity, who's involved, and it's the IDA, which is a component unit of the county, and then there's the Business Assistance Corporation, which is a component unit of the IDA. And then there's a basis of presentation, which basically, talks about the fact that, we're accrual basis, and, and there's restricted and unrestricted resources. Income taxes, agencies, a quasi-governmental organization. Cash and cash equivalents basically just defines what those are. Receivables, again, defines what those are. Insurance, deferred outflows, unearned revenue, net position, again, revenue recognition, et cetera. And then there's some other future pronouncements coming down the pipeline. Gatsby has been again, very active in issuing pronouncements. And, you know, in looking at them, it's very little likelihood that any of them will have any impact on the organization. Note 2 starts the detailed notes. So the first one is on cash and cash equivalents. And it basically, again, it spells out what the the investment policies are, and they're pretty much driven by state statutes. You have to comply with what New York State says you can and cannot invest in. And most importantly, above and beyond complying with what you can and cannot invest in is the fact that, you know, all of your cash accounts have to be fully collateralized. So part of what we do in connection with the compliance side of the audit is to make sure that that is in fact the case. And it is. There is a little bit of restricted cash, or a little more than a little bit, and basically last year recalculated it a little differently. This year, I basically took the position that if it's in the gain account, it's restricted cash. They really need to use it for the gain account. So, so you see a restricted cash account there and a restricted net position related to that. There are down at the bottom investments. Technically, they meet the definition of investments because it's more than 90 days. You basically enter into a series of 6-month CDs at various banks that mature at certain dates, and that amounted to, you know, just under $2.3 million at the end of the year. It seems silly to call them fair value there, but we are required to disclose that because they are considered to be investments. They classify them as level 1, which basically means you can go out and find that market value. There is a footnote on notes receivable or grants receivable, basically a breakdown of the pieces of the grant receivable. So there's a piece related to gain, there's a piece related to the map, and then there's a small amount of other notes receivable. There's a breakdown of what's in the allowance for doubtful uncollectible notes. Again, the allowance amount is the same as it was a year ago. And then there's a breakdown between current and long term. And I added the last paragraph there that included in there are some 6 grant anticipation notes in the aggregate of about $115,000. And those mature in June of 2023. So when you look at that kind of skews the current maturities of those notes because of that. So I thought it was a good disclosure. There's a footnote that talks about the 5-year repayment of principal and interest. And then there's 4 pages of standard disclosures related to the statewide pension system. And basically a year ago, in the year ago statements, there was a small pension liability because of investment performance and because of modifications of things like discount rates that became a pension asset this year. And there's a section on page 14 that basically shows what how the state has invested those funds. I always find it interesting on page 15. You know, there is a discount rate that's there. It was 5.9%. There's a sensitivity analysis, and, you know, pardon my French, but my old auditor had crack detector hoods off whenever I see a sense of sensitivity analysis in the financial statement. It shows you, you know, that those are what you would call soft assumptions going into developing that. Based on that, the fact that 1% swing in the discount rate that this office of the state controller uses, that pension asset of $41,000 could either be a pension asset of $166,000 or a pension liability of $107,000. In any event, it doesn't have any real bearing to the IDA because it is a statewide pension system. In order for there to be any kind of clawback to the IDA, the pension system would have to basically go under it, and then the state not cover those liabilities But again, GASB says it's a liability that you put on the books. And the state controller's office does do a good job of investing those funds. There are a lot of statewide defined benefit plans. If you were to look at Pennsylvania and you were to look at Rhode Island and you were to look at, Illinois, where the statewide defined benefit plans are significantly underwater, the fact that we've been able to stay right around 100% standpoint is, I think, is a good sign. Note 3 is just land held for investment. I understand there was maybe an offer at some point in time related to some of that. Note 4 is just net position. There's in terms of what's restricted and what's unrestricted. Note 5 is outstanding bond issues. There were none at the end of the year. Note 6 just talks about the lease is in place with the pilot agreements. And then note 7 really talks about, the intangible right of use asset and the liability. Pages 18 and 19 are the disclosures required supplementary information regarding pensions. Really, the only thing that I will comment on is what's on page 19. From your standpoint, and it goes from oldest to newest. The table reads, from your standpoint, the pension system says, here's an invoice, here's your liability, you pay the liability. So there's not a funding issue at the entity level. We've always funded 100% of what the pension system says. Thereafter, the same financial statements at the top level are broken down by entity. So agency is the IDA, loan corporation is the business assistance corporation, and basically those total numbers relate over to the totals that we talked about previously. There are no eliminations. There's no intercompany receivable payable between the agency and the loan corporation at the balance sheet level. But there is one at the income statement level, and at the total level, basically the fee that's charged between the agency and business assistance corporation. It's a limit. And then there are multiple pages related to projects that the agency has put in place. And that's considered other information from our standpoint as auditors. We just assure ourselves that there's nothing that really is outright not correct, but there's no opinion related to that. That's kind of a whirlwind tour of the financial statements. If anybody has any questions, happy to respond to those. I wasn't planning on going through business assistance only because we talked about those numbers. I mean, the largest thing that business assistance does is the loan portfolio, which we talked about, and the other thing that it does is the grant activity, which we've also talked about. I will say that that the Business Assistance Corporation did have a positive change in that position year over year. So, if anybody has any questions, please. Yeah, again, I want to thank management. You just when you come into a new situation, you never really know what it is you're going to find, and so I think that's great that there were no adjusting journalists that we needed to fix things. So
Well, it's the same on our side. We felt working with them was really easy and we didn't have any problems. It was a relief because we didn't know what to expect either.
yeah, well, like I said, I technically retired December 31st of 2021. Young, I will say. I was 63 when I retired. And as I think I said in the planning meeting, I like doing things like IDAs and things like that. So, when the opportunity came up, I said, hey, Chris, be happy to. And Chris is technically the engagement partner. So I don't know, Chris, if there's anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank everyone, and like you said, you're in good hands. Joe has really great experience, and reviewed everything. I think we're in great shape, and overall, from our perspective, it was a smooth transition, and we appreciate working with you.
If you want to make it about it.
Yeah, there was an email that I sent a couple of weeks ago. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, you didn't see it.
Ed, you want to interview me about possible issues I might have?
Yes,
Yeah, I've done this before. I
Okay.
just did not see that email. If
Okay.
I did,
it's fine.
ignored it. I didn't see it.
So, yeah. So we can either talk.
I'll do it right now.
Oh,
You want to
okay.
Step out.
That's okay, that'd be great. And other than that, like I say, once you let me know that there's an approval on the statements, I will send over the rep letter. Thank you for the legal letter. The timing was perfect. And as soon as we do all of that, it would be, there are some typos and some things that I saw when I was reading through the statements that I will fix. And then once we do that, we are good to go. Final. So. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. It was a pleasure to work with you.
Oh.
Actually, you and your team.
Thank you. Thank you. So. Mr. Chairman?
Right. Well, thank you very much. I don't want to make you stick around, so I'd like to adjourn this meeting so we can go through that question.
Perfect. That's okay with you. This will only take like 2 minutes.
Yes, we've arranged to cater.
Yeah.
Let's
Chris,
step
thank
out.
you.
Thank you. Take care.
Is it
We can
okay?
Step out the other room.
Could I take these? Because.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. It's.
Gonna start next year already.
Well, so let's see. The fact that it's interim financial information, so it's, it's part of subsequent review. Okay, well, thank you, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Be in touch.
Take care.
You got it.
All right, our next item, before we move ahead. So now that we finished up the audit, with your discussion with the auditor, we do approval of the. All right. I'll make a motion to the audit. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Perhaps you could introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We have with us today Heather and Jordan Ulrich. Many of you probably know Heather from her work at some of the banking branches here in Warsaw. And Jordan has been a longtime employee and builder of squash courts and installations throughout the Northeast and Canada. And they have a small shop set up down here in Rock Glen, and have outgrown the space, and now they've gone out on their own and want to start making their own product. And so they've come in to ask for some IDA help to get that where they want to go. So I'll send it over next one, right?
It is, yes.
I wondered if you had been there.
That would be us.
Place looks good. Never
Yeah.
figure out what was going on, so I'm gonna know.
Wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Well,
Well, it's an honor to be presenting in front of you today. I'm Heather Aldrich with Sunrise Courts.
Jordan Aldrich, Sunrise Court.
So I'm gonna speak a little bit on Jordan's behalf, and then he's gonna get into some of the more technical stuff. Jordan has been in the squash industry for the past 16 years. He has installed countless squash courts all over the nation. Ivy League schools, universities, prep schools, private clubs, health and fitness centers, and private residences. Jordan has been employed by 3 separate squash court companies, all which now are combined as one. Like all startup businesses, you find inefficiency in how things are done and look for ways to improve them. In the current squash industry, we wish to point out those issues. In speaking about freestanding sand-filled squash court panels, just a mouthful, all competitors' products are made overseas. So problem number 1, scheduling is a huge problem. Panels travel overseas in containers, and when they arrive, they sit at customs waiting to be cleared. The weather, the number of ships at port, time it takes to clear customs are all those factors. They must schedule transport to move the containers, schedule cranes, schedule hotels, flights, coordinate the crews to install, and most importantly, work within the construction project's timeline. Problem number 2, loading of all the containers. So the panels inside the containers are not properly shipped, at least not for international transport, because they're made overseas. Transport over oceans can be unpredictable. The containers tip and the materials become damaged. The installers must find creative solutions to repair damaged materials, which takes time. Time is money. The consumer sets expectations that need to be met. Problem number 3, quality of the products are subpar. You're getting whatever shipped. The lead times to replace damaged products becomes almost impossible. The root of the problem is that the manufacturer, which is in another country overseas, is so far removed from the expectations of the client that there is a breakdown of communication with the installation team. About 6 or 7 years ago, Jordan and I took the fast track program right here in this room. We knew that there was a better way. We wanted to see if we had what it takes to make this vision a reality. Bringing along all 8 of the former installers and a member of the senior management staff, Jordan chose to create his own team. We saw a more ethical way to satisfy customer needs and remain loyal to the creation of a quality product. All 11 of us are local members of this community. Let's talk about the advantages we can offer in manufacturing distribution, sales, and having a local workforce. We intend to make an American-made, quality-produced panel system. Number 2, we are an installer-owned company, which does not currently exist in the United States in the squash industry. Number 3, control over production and delivery, which we would offer a faster turnaround time. Number 4, we can produce multiple court systems at one location. Number 5, can create custom panels for unique load-in situations. And you're going to see on our PowerPoint presentation, there's some interesting installs that Jordan has come across. Number 6, consumer can experience their court being built and played on an on-site display model. So we intend to have a court right here in Warsaw where customers can come, they can play on their court before it's built so that they know the quality of the product. Number 7, face-to-face communication with installers, manufacturing team, sales, and distribution team. So that currently does not exist in the international market. Number 8, use of Wyoming County's rail transfer station. So Sunrise Courts will offer the following production lines. The Emergence line, which is a panel kit and renovation system. The Radiance line, which is a Northern American edge grain maple hardwood. And we have a collaboration with Attica Lumber for our materials currently. Luster line, glass wall systems, and our materials are sourced in Massachusetts, in the US. An Aurora line, which is our full system and half system sand-filled freestanding wall system and renovation system. And a Beacon line, which is a new innovative system coming out in 2024. So at this point, you're getting the Sunrise vibe, right? So why Sunrise? Jordan grew up in a fatherless home in Northern California. Like many young adults, he was trying to find his way. A man named Rick Paul that owned a construction company called Sunrise Construction invested in him. He taught Jordan hard work, ethics, consistency, and being a man of his word. One of our core values is supporting and developing our team members to have a sense of pride in the work that they accomplish. Similar to Jordan's background, many of our team members come from difficult upbringings. Jordan sees himself as a mentor, a coach, and not just a boss. He wants to give back what was given to him. It is our intention to give back to both the local and national communities. Personally, I have been a member of this community for the past 25 years and have grown to love it and call it home. Neither one of us are originally from this area. I've been the Salvation Army rep in Warsaw for the past 20 years. I think I just saw you at a presentation earlier today. I was involved in our local YMCA as a board chair and eventually the chief volunteer officer for the Glow region. I'm the board chair for the Town of Warsaw Planning Board. I'm a Kiwanis member, treasurer for the Western New York Rural AHAC Board, and most recently a Wyoming County Chamber member. And as most of you know me, I'm the branch manager for Community Bank here. My husband, Jordan, understands my commitment to this community and the philosophy of why giving back is so important. We want our manufacturing facility to be close to home so that we can continue to support the organizations we are passionate about. We are giving people. Our vision is to support local programs that exist and use squash as a vehicle for developing those life skills. On the national level, the squash industry is involved in many youth programs. Urban squash is a movement where squash facilities are built in underprivileged communities. These facilities allow kids to use squash to build character, confidence, and discipline. Revitalization of these neighborhoods take place, and eventually the kids impacted by the positivity of those qualities grow into adults that help others to succeed. It becomes a contagious cycle and changes lives for the better. We want to be part of that movement. We want to thank you for your time today and answer any questions that you have. We have a short PowerPoint presentation that walks you through the production phase and finished products on some of the courts we've built. Yeah. It's all you.
So here's the container. This is in New York City. This is pretty much how you get delivered. So like we're offloading in the middle of the night here.
You can see the container, then yeah.
This is in Minneapolis here. This is in Massachusetts and Andover on somebody's street. This is US Squash in Philadelphia. They've built every court that's there for every vendor. So this is kind of a local shipping here. This is when we get inside. We pretty much build a building inside a building. So you go in with these pre-manufactured wall panels. That's what we would assemble to go on site, and we end up filling the cavity with sand, which makes it a dead clay wall system. So it's kind of the evolution of squash. Why the density, like the Northern American hard maple, it gives the correct ball response for the play. So you don't want a hollow cavity, nor want to go in a speaker box with ball bouncing. You almost can't hear yourself talk if it's hollow like that. So this was in Baltimore for Rack It Up Detroit, an urban program. This is back at US Squash. So that's the shape of the squash court system. Kind of just us building, and it's the floor system. Kind of how it should look when we're done. This is an MBA, a smaller panel system. We had to go through an elevator shaft to get inside and drop the forklift down through. So you make everything kind of the unique to get to the sub basement. So, but this is us basically installing. You kind of get to, see how things get finished. The more we assemble here, the less time it takes in the field. And
They're actually filling the walls with sand at that point.
it's like a kiln dried, comes from a quarry that's like in between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. It's quartz, but it's run through, so we're not sending a moldy product out that's got water inside of it. I built a moving wall inside somebody's home for the Levines, so we're setting the steel inside. Some of the floor lines we had put down for them to show the international doubles courts, and so this is at our salesman's facility. We built him a glass court middle of last year. So this is in Boca Raton. It's the outside step detail for him. This is back in Baltimore. We pouring concrete and we had to get the materials inside, so we're loading in the floors. This is pretty much done. I actually got my wife to come help us finish to paint some game lines and stuff, and that's my mentor there. We've been together for quite a few years.
Take some time off from the bank to go about clean splash.
This is just an upper view from the mezzanine on that same project. This is a glass court at somebody's home for the Yens. We did a steel structure that we adhered to, so
all drilled and tapped through the glass. This is in Lifetime Fitness in Houston. 4 panel courts and then a glass court kind of where those scissor lifts are. You'll see, I'm pretty sure we loaded through the 3rd story window. And then this is back at US Squash. So this is, I did 3 courts with moving walls. They wanted a like an auditorium area that they could sit from up top. So all 2 of the interior walls move as curtain walls and makes the whole space open as one. So quite a few courts here. A couple of my guys. So they were doing some job analysis there. Working on the scaffold there. Scott's at his table putting the floor together. This is some of Lifetime Fitness being assembled. We're starting to glass. Scott was currently working in University Club of Boston, painting some courts. Our guys are doing some glass installation. These guys were at Indian Mountain School in Connecticut. Put the floor together. We're on our way to work there. This is pretty much when the glass court was finished, and it's how these leveling systems, they go a millimeter at a time. We're in collaboration with Yonkers. It's a flooring manufacturer. It makes kind of how floors go together. Before it was all random length wood that would come out and processed, and then you would sand it on site. Well, this is pre-finished. And so it creates like a dust-free environment. So the client's not getting all this dust as soon as they open the doors inside of there. But everything in a squash court has a wood floor. So it's a lot of beach we put down. There's kind of the facility as we're finishing up there. Guys are still at the University Club of Boston. This is Indian Mountain School. This is the court we put down for our pro at our shop down there. We built 2 courts for them, or for him to come play.
So this is right in our facility, right in Rockland. We have a court there that we use for testing.
That's when we're done in Lifetime Fitness. This is Peter Nichols in New York City. Same place. This is pretty much what we offer here. There's for the international. But these are international singles. We do frame back walls. We do fin back walls. There's other things that we offer too. Well played. Okay. This is one of our corner connection systems, how it all goes together. The bolts, renderings that we'll send out, kind of give the client some understanding of what we're putting together for them. Some more US Squash.
Some of the finished products here.
I had gone before the US Open and fixed one of the floors for them. They had some mishaps happen in one of the courts from somebody, so we went there and took care of it for them. This is a North American doubles court. This is a Portland Community Squash, one of the urban programs. This is in Maine.
It was a synagogue.
Pretty tough to put all of them in there. I took out the front windows of the church and loaded in through the front. Glass door. This is at Access Youth Academy in San Diego. That's it, US Squash. That's it.
kind of questions do you have today?
What are you gonna be manufacturing in Rockland?
So at Rock Glen, we won't be making, well, this is what we've currently made. So it's an M3 panel that's glued to steel studs on either side. And then on site, we fill this cavity with sand.
We're actually in the process of purchasing Breezy Hill, the old bowling alley up on 20A in Merchant. And that will be our manufacturing center.
Like to make the bowling alley like the factory floor, and then the banquet area. I'd like to put a pickleball court in there and a couple, just basically the prototypes, you know, the demos, so they can go and play. There's nowhere else in the world that you can actually go to the facility that's making your product and actually play on it, which is, I mean, I don't understand why. Because all the tools are there to put it together. It's pretty easy if you got a little space next to it. So it gives them an opportunity. Also, our salesman really wants to come and like if the YMCA wants to come up, they can come play with a pro athlete.
So our salesman is, he was the best in the world in 2008, squash pro player. And he actually teaches now down in his facility in Boca, the best female squash player currently in the world.
I was gonna ask you if there's some pickleball implications here, because that is just exploding.
Yeah, so pickleball, we are going to do that as well as padel courts. Wales, Egyptian, and squash is pretty huge there. He's really big into padel too. So most of the racket sports are pretty. Squash kind of gives the fundamentals for all of it, because you have tempered glass that's inside of it. You have wood floors. You're already painting. So like pickleball is a bunch of painting that's on the floor, where padel is a lot of glass around the back and some lighting above. So it pretty much puts all aspects of it when you do a squash court. You're not like in a racquetball court, you have a wood floor and you have panels on the outsides. There's not much to that, but if you go into squash and all these other implications, pretty much every racket sport, whether it's basketball or volleyball or tennis, I mean, all of them kind of fundamental around everything that's inside of a squash court. So we will be putting pickleball up, padel, sports rooms too. For Yonkers, it's a big thing with the Unibat 62. I'm actually the only certified installer in the United States. So I put a ton of that stuff down. So they call us. I've gone to Memphis to do some consulting for them and stuff. So we'll pretty much put anything in. But squash is where my most of my experience had come from, and it just kind of branched off into other areas. So
You get involved in any of the school system?
I have not. So Squash Education Alliance is through Barrett Takeson and Greg Bourne. We're pretty close. I got verbal confirmation from them to do their product. I would like to be solely their vendor. That's who the place in the Jewish synagogue was. So the urban programs align with a local school that's there to bring those kids from that school to that. So we will be involved. Our salesman is involved in Squash Buster, City Squash, and Street Squash. So they already do 3 other urban programs that Sunrise is involved with. So we're moving towards. I want to get back, right? That's the whole kind of purpose of why we're here on planet Earth, to leave it a little better than when we got here, right? So so we will in some aspect.
Only would say that like beach sand or what type of sand?
So it's like a rock. It's not, you can't really call it sand. If I was, no, I left it in the car because I felt it was going to be detrimental. I'd spill it everywhere. It's kind of pretty much rock. So if you were to put play sand inside of it, it actually acts as an abrasive. One of my competitors puts that in and their wall falls apart. And it's because it cuts the glue off the walls. So we actually put rocks inside of it. It's very small rock. It's 8 to 1/4 inches what the dense, the sizing of the rock inside. But I call it sand because it's pretty small, but kind of misrepresentation.
I was curious about the shape of the racket. Nice, pick up out.
Yeah, here.
Is it? A newer, it used to be a circular thing with a very thin.
It's, I guess, the new thing. This was from Olympic squash. They had it in they threw it away in the dumpster and I had taken their tin and I screwed it to the ceiling of our shop and, Gareth Weber said, you want a racket? I was like, yeah, sure. So when the pro came down here, he was here for a few hours and, Kevin Carlson had taken some videos or taken some pictures and, Paul Figlow had done some video. So I was waiting for a meeting and I went in and started playing and I called Whale and I was like, obviously I'm better at tools than a racket, but I did play for a little while. I'm not very good at it though, I can tell you that. I should stick to building.
Neither one of us play, but yeah. The first time you played was down in Piedmont, I think in Atlanta at the Piedmont Club. They had an opportunity to play him and his team.
We played back, way back in the sixties, I played squash. But it was a circular thing all about.
We are doing a lot of updating our marketing plan. We actually have a mentorship program with Lions Global with Town Lions, working with him. We've got some few other resources. We're really trying to get a branding Bible down and work on a website. So but there's a lot of moving parts with this right now. We obviously have some jobs coming up. We need to have a facility to start making our panels. Thus, the building is which we're purchasing in.
So how many competitors are there on the installing side, but you're actually gonna make all this stuff here?
Yes.
So you'll be the only one in the country.
Yes.
So you'll
Yes.
have a supply chain that's near and local. Sure, there's gonna be some difference in cost, but. Who's your competitor? I mean, put a squad, I don't even know what to call it.
So you get on the internet, there's a German company, there's a Czechoslovakian company. Courtwall is out of Slavic area. So there's nobody in the United States that makes the sand-filled system. They don't even have close to the years of experience either. So we can offer a lot for the customer. The biggest thing that ends up happening, which is super frustrating, is you get people that'll delegate to the next one. So nobody in America is taking the information and making your plans, making your renderings. So then by the time the container actually gets there, you don't know what's inside and you have to deliver to the client specified on the drawings. Well, then you get either the wrong anchors, or if the walls come damaged, then you're trying to fix them and waiting for something to come overseas. Currently, it's almost impossible, right? With what's going on. So everything we have is from the United States. The panels are from Wisconsin, right? So the studs I'm literally getting out of Rochester. It's everything we have based is local to the United States. Pretty close to here because that's where Heather is. Heather wasn't moving, so we're doing everything out of Warsaw. So
That's the way it is.
I'm excited to have control and give something to the client that give them realistic. I'll give a specific. Barrett had called me and he's like, hey, I want to put in 2 international singles and a North American doubles. Can you give me a quote? I said, sure. So a North American doubles, if you put a sand-filled system wall in, the wall weighs about 17 to 18,000 pounds, depending on what's inside of it. The thing's 20 foot tall, it's 45 feet long. It's really like you're an iron worker. So I said, hey, has anybody done anything on the concrete? What's the depth? And he's like, and nobody's asked any questions. I said, well, what about tying to the roof structure at the top? I don't care if it's me or somebody else, you have to hold that wall up somehow because it's so heavy, it'll fall over. So he's like, nobody's asked the architect any of that. Well, I had done 12 courts for Andover with Tyler Hinckley. They're pretty big architect place. So I ended up having a phone conversation with Tyler and he says, hey, can I give you the engineer's number and you guys can go over stuff? And so we ended up talking and he's like, I can't believe that nobody's brought these things up. Everybody's still building a squash court. They're still filling it with a material, but then to not bring up the specifics. that's why I think an installer owned company, we can offer so much because it's not just, we're not sitting behind the desk and I'm not. You could tell I'm not Mr. Soup guy, but I could tell you, I know how to build a squash court really well. There's not much I can't do inside a squash court. And I want to give quality product to the client. So give them, put them on the right path, not lead them down astray, and give them false hopes. So, or the other thing is that'll end up happening is people will come back and say, I need a change order at the end because these conditions aren't, we didn't understand this. Well, you get a set of plans, read them, and that's the whole point of sending out a quote and understanding. So, that's anyhow.
So you're assembling a lot of this in terms of planing and getting all the product, finished. And that's coming to you pretty much prefab and you're assembling it and then take it to the job.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm making a Lego set, erector set, just big Legos, putting it together, shortening my time inside their space. When I go there, most things are already painted, the lights are up. Like for their purposes, I'm a trim kit, I'm a treadmill, you're right. So like I'm coming in, I'm wheeling through the front door with, if it's 6 courts, I'm coming in with 400,000 pounds of stuff that I'm putting inside, and they want me finished in 6 weeks, so they want a turnkey and they've got an open started after that. And if you're waiting on customs to clear you or waiting on some boat that didn't, paddle over here fast enough, well, then, I mean, in New York City, you could wait, it could be $10,000 a month for rent and your schedule's just held up and it gets super frustrating. I lived my life for quite a few years based on when the next boat would get there, and you're rushing at the end and pulling 18, 19-hour days just to get done so you can keep the schedule. When if we're locally made, we can control our shipping,
What's the other side dimension splash court? Single and doubles.
So, okay, so it's 640 by 975. So squash is a English game, right? So it's in metric. For conversions, this court is 21 feet wide by 32 feet long. A North American doubles is 25 feet wide by 45 feet long. It makes a rectangle out of the top at 31 feet. It drops down five feet. It's really for lobs, right? Because you're hitting the ball from 45 feet away. Your play is on that trajectory. The ceiling of a North American doubles court is around 24 feet. It can be a little lower, but you have WSF regulations that you have to, your space has to be adhered to. In an international singles, you can't have a ceiling from finished floor height less than 18'6". Same kind of thing. It's for the lob shot. How much pressure's inside of the ball kind of gives what you, if you're at 18.5 or 18.4, there's not enough clearance for your height or your shot. So it gives a little bit. The head wall of a international singles is 15 feet from the playing surface. And I'm sure you guys seen how it was angled in the back, it goes down to 7 feet. So that's where in play. Anything out of over the red line is out of play. There's also a tin in the front. You lower and raise for standard and professional heights. Basically keep an honest man honest. You have to keep the ball above a certain height. So you can't just hit an inch above the floor and make them dive at the front of the ball. So
Still called a banger board?
It's a sounding board for what WSF regulation calls it, but same thing, banger board. We make them out of steel. Unidex does some of them. We also have Old Dutchman's out of Buffalo do some of them. Basically, just so they can do. The reason I would like to keep the metal, it's loud. It also gives them a magnet, so then or allows them to use magnets for advertising. When there's a pro event, they could stick something on it, take it off, and it's not there all the time. Vendors will like to change out their names on the front for the pro events. There's a lot of stuff on Squash TV that they'll change out. So the tin's kind of a advertisement portion of the court.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for coming in.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
I don't know, there's a lot of renovation. Only one of them. You know, that's the move. I said I played it years ago.
Right, can I sign you out when we're done? Okay. Rob, you just sign them out when we're done.
They can scoot you right out this.
Let's just do it aside or. Up on the right hand side where it says HK. Nope, down a little bit, right there. Just click that.
Yeah.
And then it's probably underneath. You'll have to sign it out. If not, we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it. I don't want to lose this. Okay. So that's all right. We'll sign it up after.
I didn't hear it. Didn't hear it. Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference. What we're worried about, what the side of it.
I mean, this is a perfect story about the program that we put together here in the town. They want the pet program.
Yeah.
You know, and then they took a building, renovated it.
Yeah.
Now they're taking another building and renovated it. They're using local suppliers.
I was gonna bring that up.
They're gonna use the rail siding, the IDA does. Their artworks, to ship their product out, so artwork get a piece of thing out of that.
Don't think it's totally renovated. But I think they're not living.
Yeah.
How long have they been over there?
Where, right, Glenn? Oh, 3-4 years.
I mean, it is pretty renovated.
Maybe longer than that, Jim, it's been a while.
Yeah, that's probably very full.
Oh, yeah. I never knew who it was.
You would ask anybody what they're doing in there. I don't think anyone would get smart.
So the action before the board on this project today is that we have run a cost benefit analysis and it looks very close to being over 100,000 or close to 100,000. So to be safe, we conferred with council and we thought it'd be best if we just had a public hearing because we have to anytime over 100,000. So that's really what we're looking for today. And then after the public hearing, if there are any comments, we can deal with this on April 3rd. Next month. Right.
That's why.
Yes, we will need a formal motion to authorize. Just so you know, the cost benefit analysis shows that
I didn't even know it.
the investment comes back at $26 to 1. So it's good ratio.
I'll make the motion.
Let's second.
Question. Silver, they say silver locker.
Correct.
Correct.
So what the Silver Locken is asking for is the extension of the sales tax. Under the current zoning, he's allowed to do 2 more units. Housing. So he's planning on doing that this year. So in order to do that, he's asking for the extension till December 31st of the end of this year. Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And AC.
Yeah, the same individual, the owner of Base Camp in Perry, as you may recall, that was project that the board approved, and the idea was to play off the location of the park to Perry and Base Camp, where people would come in. Hopefully spend a little time in the Main Street area, rest and relax, and then spend some money locally. We approved his project, and now he's requesting, because of the pandemic and everything else, everything got delayed, so he's just asking for another extension on that to go till April 30th of 2024.
Do I have a motion to approve that? Second. All in favor? Aye.
Yeah, just quickly, just want to let the board know that myself, Scott, Becky Ryan, and some other local officials went down to Rochester to participate in the governor's announcements of $10 million of grant funding to Perry for the downtown revitalization initiative. The project has some significant items in it that will be coming for the IDA course of assistance, and more specifically, it has quite a large housing component, which is something we desperately need in this county. So just an FYI, what kind of culture? Rental units primarily.
People that actually work.
Yes, market rate.
So what do they call it?
Market rate. It's not senior or anything. I don't know if there's any senior component. Still working with, I started working with an arcade woodworking company that has outgrown their lease space, and now they're looking around arcade for a building that will work for them. I gave them a few ideas. They're supposed to get back to me on that. One of the spaces they're interested in where the mill building burned down, they would like to buy that parcel and build a building there. So made the connection with the building owner, the property owner on that with prospect. Let's see what happens. Still working with that metal fab business in arcade that wants to expand again. We did a project for them 10 years ago, and they had a record year with revenue, and so they need to put some more addition on to their building. Met with a Warsaw resident here in town that wants to buy a local business related to the wood industry. So we talked about some financing opportunities. Just want to let the board know we closed on the lumberyard loan, so that project is, I think, slated for a ribbon cutting shortly. The chamber is doing that, and then we closed, as Robin had mentioned, on the Park Warner, aka Empire Distributing, on February 27th, which was the big 2 days before the taxable status date. So we got it in just under the wire. Still working with that ag business in Java about an expansion project. A lot of these projects, they just kind of linger out there because people are getting cost proposals. Then they go back and they think about it some more. Having discussions still with that consultant from Mitsubishi about partnering with Texas Prime Flood Power on a hydrogen power plant in the town of Middlebury. So we've had a couple follow-up calls since the board met last. And then Farmcraft Brewery, they have not pulled the trigger on their financing, so we're still waiting on that. They're going to come in for some financing to us, but because this project has lingered so long, our gain loan fund has built the funds back up and so the other loans. So we have about 180,000. They asked for 200, but we have $180,000 of 1% money. I offered it to them. They want to take advantage of it.
This brewery we talked,
Farmcraft Brewery and Bill Meyer. Yeah.
that point, he's like, oh, that's what I talked to you about. I just didn't get the farm.
So that's my report.
Any other business?
Um,
For the board?
Jimmy, do you need to get authorization to sign the lease or the mortgage thing for the?
Yeah, we did a project, the board approved the project for Greenlight Campground, in which we took a junior position on the mortgage assignment. There are like, I think we're in 5th position. There's a lot of lenders on this project.
Yeah.
Which one? This is the gal up here on.
Cal Penna, is your name?
Patty or not. Anyways, involved with the financing is Pursuit and Community Bank, and then there's previous property owner that's holding the mortgage. Anyways, we promised everyone that we would be in the final position on the mortgage. Come to find out, we somehow passed pursuit lending, which is the SBA portion. And they would like us to back out and go back down the bottom. And in order to do that, we need the authorization to sign a subordination.
That's what we talked about last minute before the closing.
Yeah, and I do have a copy of the subordination agreement. The IDA's role in this agreement is simply to subordinate its lease interest. We have actually have authority through the loan corporation, because you already agreed to that lien position. We just never got the agreement signed. I think Pursuit's coming in late to the game, but really this court's being asked to just subordinate its lease interest and for Jim to be able to sign.
For the last one of mine.
Yeah, and you know, when I say lease interest, that's the IDA transaction, right? So that's just a finance transaction. We don't have any collateral through the IDA. It's a different, this is just for the finance, for the pilot. That's all it's for. It's in place. So we always do this actually. Whenever there's a mortgage modification, the IDA will subordinate its interest. But we like to have, you know, the board informed and get approval for doing that. That will look for the minutes for Robin.
We, I'm not sure what the motion should look like, but would somebody make it?
It's authorization to sign a subrecipient.
The motion to sign the subordination. Yes.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We still five?
Yes, we are.
Are we gonna adjourn?
If you adjourn, we can turn it off. I make a motion.
All in favor? Next meeting, April 13th.
The same people that are bringing up that public hearing that Doug